Well, hello, it's Ollie. You know me. I'm the guy who makes the lightning bottlers. I'm here to talk to you about Apollo Plus. Apollo Plus is a creator-owned platform where every subscriber helps audio fiction creators such as me. You can listen ad-free, you get early access, exclusives, behind-the-scenes, supercuts, and more on Apollo Plus. There's so much good stuff there. Check it out. Join Apollo Plus through the Apollo Podcast app or by going to apollopods.com. I'll see you in a little bit.
Scotty's Symphony.
Oh, hello. Didn't see you come in there. Been a while, hasn't it? It's almost 12 months since I last released anything. That's a bit mad, isn't it? Well, madness is always the name of the game when you're bottling lightning. And in some ways, bottling lightning is a bit like going mad. But in other ways, it's like bottling lightning. Today we got a story about bottling lightning in its figurative sense, its literal sense, and in its super sense. Where's that book? Ah, here it is. Now, to begin at the beginning.
Pain shot through my stiffening hand, clutching my pen as it did in the shack by the lake that I had rented out for the week. The end of my contractual grace period had arrived, and I had a week to get it all down, ink to parchment, so to speak, as my latest and greatest and first of my works was to be sent to the editors for finalizing. There it sat, though, this blank and dominating piece of paper. In truth, I had been so passionate about the idea that I had set about building my entire life around the pursuit of this, the first of my many opuses, or opie, if you wanted to be fancy about it. And here I sat. The candles I had lit, for mood if nothing else, began to drip and stain the table. I would be paying for the damage of that to the owner, I was certain. It is in this aesthetic vein that I had taken to using a pen that required an inkwell. Something of the Gothic in me reached out and demanded that I did as my betters and forerunners had done, making something beautiful and haunting, with the tools of a trade long since past. It is here that my proverbial and literal ink had, and pardon the parlance, runneth dry. I knew how it ended. I knew all the trials and tribulations. I knew the face of the horror they faced, and the horror we daren't speak in truth. But to begin is to open something in me, to lay my artistic soul bare. This is a truly terrifying concept. The storm began to roll outside, the pitter-patter of the rain falling against the cabin's open windows, a drift of the scent rolling in as it hit the ground outside. Petrichor, I think it's called. I think to myself wistfully, putting my works to the side to solidify my need to feel intellectual, in an attempt to feel, like my betters before me, to feel capable and worthy of my words. So it begins. I wrote to the paper a love note in all its blanching awkwardness to my beloved who had come before, Shelley, Stoker, Byron, Poe, two of the Brontes, though never the third, those whose words had touched me in ways that I had never known to be real. This husk of mine becoming host to something greater for their insights and their moreness, though that wasn't a word. At this exact moment of anguish, confusion, horror, disgust, trepidation, murderousness, and, of course, moreness, bloody Richard walked in the room. Richard, with his unctuous perfumes, his bottled glory, his strange bouffant hair, and his disgusting ruffled trousers, he took a moment to take me all in and then chuckled.
Bottling lightning, are we, madam?
Hardly, I replied sheepishly, but then I remembered my place. I drew myself up to my full countenance and strode across the room to the lever.
Hardly? But it looks like you're trying very hard. I could hear you from down the hall. Nay, I could hear you from the orchard. All that cackling and bubbling and cursing. Oh, the cursing. Well, it just won't do at all.
Richard, the bastard, always got on my last nerve. Always there with a comment, a critique, a criticism, a cyst on my very being and practice, a cudgel to my ideas and theories, a cutthroat to inspiration and a sell to enrichment. He irked in a way that kept me irked for a whole day. Well, I'm not sure what you heard, Richard, but frankly, that's enough of your nattering and yammering. I would like you to cease this activity post-haste and return to your quarters without so much as a peep. Your presence has disturbed both me and my process. How am I supposed to bottle lightning when I am plagued by you, Richard? How am I supposed to summon the clarion of the skies, the hot molten metal of clouds, the shriek of the gods made manifest upon the earth when you're here? Begone, Richard. Back to your quarters and your hovel. There is no need for you here. You, all your quips and your queries and your suggestions on how best to bottle lightning. Go back to your rooms and contemplate what I have said, what I have thought and believed, and do not ever come back into my inner sanctum, my place of peace, and suggest that you know how to bottle lightning better than I. A long, studious pause entered the room, dancing around the corked containers with crackling ozone corked within.
Well, madam, it seems you have no use for me. I appear to be somewhat of an irritant to the process, madam. Madam will excuse my intrusion. Let it not be said that I do not know my place in the production of bottled lightning. For I, Richard, son of brothers, brother of some, and father of others, I am no cur nor interrupter to the magnificent work that madam does
See,
create.
this is exactly what I'm talking about, Richard. A simple apology and a by your leave would have sufficed. And now you get into questions of statehood and lineage and all sort of other bollocks. Begone, Richard, out of my sanctum, to the pits with you, fuck off.
By your leave, madam.
And then Richard, tail between his legs, metaphorical or otherwise, I'll let you, the listener, decide, as there is no indication so far how real these accounts be, how extraordinary a world we live in, left the room, leaving me to return to my brooding, back to my dilemma. Personal and frustrating as it be, the page still sat empty, bar the initial words I had written so long ago that I had forgotten their intent or meaning. The paper crumpled in my hand as the roll of thunder echoed into the space from outside.
Oh, I'm sorry. I know you were listening, but I gotta tell you about Apollo Plus. I don't have to tell you about Apollo Plus. I want to cajole you into getting Apollo Plus, because Apollo Plus is pretty good. It's a creator-owned platform where every subscriber helps audio fiction creators such as me. You can listen to a bunch of Shakespeare on there, like fully cast Shakespeare productions, as well as things like side questing. Side questing is really fun. I really love side questing. And Quid Pro Euro. Oh, we left EU and we have some japes about it. So support other great shows that you love, such as the ones that I've mentioned. You can support other great creators. You can also listen to me and the other people who help make the show talk about the show that we made. Join Apollo Plus either through the Apollo Podcast app or by going to apollopods.com.
Again, I began to scribble furiously. Progress, I thought to myself. Proof that there is a story here, that there is something worth writing, that this dismal weather and setting had produced within me the same rush of inspiration that my forebears had wrought upon the pages of their own works. becoming a veritable something to be feared and respected and studied for ages to come, and more beyond that, that I would accrue the respect I rightful... The crack of lightning striking the tree across the way stumbled my verbose barbarism as I jumped in my skin. Reflecting on the words of the pages that I had come to write upon in this furore of productivity yielded nothing of value. Again. Perhaps the issue was a lack of inspiration. The setting was just right, this I knew for certain, as I knew the lake that I had come to know as the backdrop of my efforts was the very same that my predecessors had seen in the days of their work as well. Something, though, I knew not what, was missing. Traipsing through the veritable chattery of the infamous notebook I had taken to the meeting with the executives of the publishing house to pitch the damn thing, I began to trawl. It was all there, the names of characters, the places, the events, all written in crude scrawl that reflected the very jarring nature of my current predicament. Now to just put it from here to there. A thought easier thought than actually achieved, it would seem. The wondrous prose that I would have flown from me to begin this story would have to come from somewhere, from something more than my current surroundings. I knew, of course, of the treetop house that lay in the grounds of the property. Perhaps there, nearer the clarity of the lake's waters, I could come to some understanding of what I needed to say, what words would be right. The walk through the storm was chilling, the fleeced coat that I wore for warmth drenched in the sky's melancholy as I brought my freezing hands to the rung of the ladder that led to the secret home of my inspirations. It's working already. The treehouse was, of course, a small and compact space. Out here in the greater wilds of the lake house's manor, I could smell the petrichor. I was right, as the World Wide Web had confirmed my recollection of the word, more directly and cleanly, accompanied by the scent of pine and oak that littered the forest where the cabin called home. I also smelt the unctuous smell again. Richard was lurking. Reveal yourself, Richard, before I take this opportunity to redirect the great vastness of the nimbus to strike you down where you stand. Richard popped up out of a nearby bush, brushing leaves off his troubadour's doublet as he did.
Yes, madame. I hate to disturb you from your reverie, but it is that earlier I didn't get out the massage I was hastened to bring to you.
Oh yes, a massage, you say?
No, a message, a message. If you were in want of a massage, I could possibly... I am trained in a host of different relaxation techniques. Some with happy endings.
No, thank you, Richard. What have I said about you propositioning me?
Only when drunk or sad.
And I am neither.
Is reverie not a kind of melancholy?
Not today, Richard.
Then I apologize. I have misread the situation.
Very well, Richard. You are forgiven on this occasion. And I must admit that your hideous attire does make me chuckle, so you're completely off the hook.
Thank you, madame.
You may go.
But the the message is still unsaid.
Oh yes, you're quite right. A long and awkward pause erupted between Richard and myself. I was at a loss. I expected that etiquette dictate that he deliver the message post-haste, though after a glacial moment, I realized that he was still waiting for permission. Well, speak.
It is Emily. She sends massage as she is on horseback and will be at the forest cabin by dusk.
The awkward pause transmogrified into a silence of epic proportions. So weighty, the silence, that it started to sink and divot into the earth between where I stood and the bush that Richard was still waist-deep in. I see. Emily is returning.
Yes, madam.
Tonight.
Earlier than that.
Earlier?
Yes, by dusk.
So before the night.
That is when dusk is. Before twilight and after evening. When the sun is low in the sky.
Yes, Richard, I know what dusk is. And on horseback, you say?
Yes.
She didn't take a taxi?
Your...
Or an Uber? Maybe a Lyft? Richard started to bleed from the ear.
I assume you mean carriage.
You're quite correct. Excuse me, Richard. Ever since I woke this morning, it's been a strange debate for me where exactly I have found myself. I now know that it has been raining, that we are at home in the cabin on the grounds of the lake house, and that it either is or isn't some sort of world of phantasms. To be honest, Richard, I haven't even established if you're fully human or some sort of anthropomorphic cat. I still have no idea what era we find ourselves in. All I have to go on is that Emily arrives at dusk, which could have us sometime, as I assume, that is not yet lunch, and that she arrives by horseback, suggesting she is someone who can use a crop. The light of my phone had begun to strain my eyes as the lightning struck again nearby, the illumination of the strike's flash drawing my attention to the world outside allowed me to see with distinct clarity as the electricity rippled across the surface of the water, diffused by the natural defense. I had wondered, in that moment, whether that is why fish had never chosen land. Back to the task at hand, though. I looked down at the words that I had written. Something about the natural elements had clearly been helping as the pages that sat before me, sodden with rainwater as the ink smudged beyond the recognition that would make them in any way useful. This was stupid. Trek back to the cabin was easy enough, though I did almost fall out of the treehouse when my foot slipped a rung on the lattice that bore itself upon the great oak's edifice. The sound of my wet footsteps and the dripping of my coat were the only sounds as I entered that liminal space of the lakeside cabin once more. There was a rush in me, though, a ferocity of lingual necessity that drew me to repeat the words, for the most part, of the works that had been ironically inspired and ruined by the rainfall in this perfect tonal storm that had brewed outside. Is it then that the world would be torn asunder by the winds of chance and change again in this, the epoch of our suffering? For to live is to suffer, said the great French philosophers. A quick search proved that Nietzsche had in fact been German. The crack of lightning from out the windows followed the pat of the paper ball I had created hitting the floor by the full waste paper basket I had brought from home. Another aesthetic choice, for sure. Again. I knew what I had wrought upon myself with this, the necessity of my works, this burning need in me to shape the ink the way I saw fit, to become a veritable inkomancer, as I had clumsily allowed to slip to the executives in my production meeting, to the rousing applause and praise that only profit-driven morons could take to such a term. I hated the term inkomancer, but it was contractually necessary now. Emily arrived that evening. Assuming she had not arrived already, I was particularly fed up as she had arrived after the sun had set. I decided not to make a point of it. You said you would arrive at dusk. I've never been good at keeping promises, even to myself. Emily, haughty and bird-like, stared down at me from her magnificent steed, a dappled brown cart horse with a mane flopping over their eyes. She swung one leg over the back of the horse and jumped down from the saddle. Her height had always given me pause, but seeing her jump from nearly 8 feet in the air to land all 5'3" of her actual stature was comical, to say the least.
Traffic.
In the woods,
In the city. Spooked Margarine.
the horse protested. Emily pulled the reins and shushed the great Shire horse, who quietly ruffled its mane out of its eyes. I see. Margarine, huh?
Yes,
What happened to Butter?
we had to sell her.
Oh?
She kicked a stable boy to death.
Oh.
To death, madam. Oh, shush. Then we got Marguerite. She was from the same studying path.
I see. That explains
The
the...
similar markings, yes.
Honestly, I can't believe it's
Don't, madam. Do not. Not even in jest.
not even in jest.
A boy died, madam.
This is fair enough. Emily nodded. Will you be staying the night?
I expect so.
I expected so too. I have drawn up the guest bedroom, as well as drawing you a bath. I've also drawn this nude portrait of you. Emily graciously took the watercolour and held it under her arm.
Thank you, madam. Though that is quite unnecessary.
Oh, pish. You've been busy riding all day, not even in a carriage. One must assume that one would enjoy an Assam tea and a soak in a tub full of bubbles after a long journey. Emily relented.
That would be very gracious and courteous of you. But I also come on important business that cannot wait. You of course know that even still the contract is not yet dry. There is still time and money to consider.
Oh dear, yes. You are quite right. Well, come. To my study, I mean. We have things to discuss. You're welcome to come after, but businesses with pens must come first. And hardly.
Thank you. And bring Richard. Between the three of us, we must decide who the incommencer shall be, whose duty is that of the paper proliferator, and who shall be the word bitch.
The line wrung out of the pen as easily as the words tumbled from my mouth during the meeting with the executives, formulating and forming the maudlin tone that I had thought to bring to the page, and striking it through with something gaudy and wittier. Perhaps, I had thought, I should try again. I could not bear the tear at the paper as I had done with all my other manuscripts. The children of my work brought to an early and justified end for their ineffable defiance of my vision. This one was special. I had needed the moment to clear my head, to take in the tone that this place had flooded into me with its unceasing and opportunistically distraught weather. Why was it not speaking to me as it had done to those I had adored? There had been a ritual I had heard of as I sat and pondered the musings of my predicament, to revivify the dried ink of a well, to make the offerings of nature gods and spirits beyond the ken of man, and distill them into the words and writings of those who had tried to capture the gothic beauty of them in their works. Thunder rolled outside again, and I contemplated. I had just dried since my last foray into the world outside, the woods and forests that held all this and many other wordsmiths' horrors and dreams. The sort of place where a flight of fancy may entreat one to the fairies of the wilds beyond the eyes of man, or to face with the ghosts of traumas long past and lives long since lived. In short, it was warm inside. Through it all, though, I kept coming back to the pages I had written. The characters, so light and jovial to the life that I had in store for them. The lessons I wanted those who were to read to learn through their suffering. Like a proud parent, I sat and waited. Like the proverbial mother the world wanted to pretend we all are, coddling them and wanting to shield them from the harms that I had yet to wreak upon them. Like the proverbial father the world wanted to pretend they all are, cold and distant, teaching the stoicism they would need to learn to survive the harsh realities of their world. My world. I had come to love my words. I had to change the tone. I simply must change the tone to match this place that I had chosen. I must engage in the ritual, to entreat the powers that be, the spirits of those before and those to come, those beyond the world I knew in truth, and to the world I knew only in metaphor and exposition. Emily prepares the font. Richard lays the parchment in the bottom, and I, the word bitch, begin to hold my breath. Emily pours the liquid words into the font, a gallon of black squid ink, milked from the strange creature that lurked in the lake by the lake house and turned into the finest ink for fountain pens. It glistened like oil. I smiled. It was now my time to dive into the murky depths and come out with clarity. Richard laid a stack of parchment on the back of my head, and Emily began to text furiously, so that my thoughts and pictures bleed through the back of my head and onto the top page. With my monogrammed towel around my neck to protect my porcelain white shoulders, I dunked my head within the font of ink. And I submerged, hoping to find the answers I was looking for. Who am I? So far even a name has eluded my lips, merely titles and pet names. Where was I? I had a sense of my local geography and its closeness to my heart, but I had yet a damn idea about where I was geographically, which continent. If I walked through the night until a new dawn, would I find a small town? Would I find anything? Or would the roads simply trail off into sketches, and then paper, and then void? When was I? The anachronisms that kept coming at me left and right were upsetting, so I let my mind rest in the ink until I saw a singular pen with beautiful strokes, staining the page with letters and numerals, with ideas and inspiration, with thoughts and feeling, plot and happenstance, life and verve. And then I saw another pen, doing the same in the opposite direction. Verve and life, feeling and thought, inspiration and idea, happenstance and plot, numerals and letters. And each time the ink flowed together as if conjoined. But like two mismatched jigsaw pieces, the work was disjointed, strange, mangled in some way. And then I looked at the hands holding the pens. One was feminine, clipped nails beautifully polished so that the light caught the gloss in this strange void space. The other hand, on the other hand, was calloused, sausage-fingered, and fat. Dirt under nails and jagged at the edges. And in this moment of horror, I was pulled out the basin.
Give her a moment.
I saw it, but I must be confirmed.
Give Madame a moment, damn you.
Richard, you saw it. I saw it too. But we must be confirmed.
You are correct in your assumptions.
My lady, you don't know what you saw. You are weak from the ritual, tired. It has not yet been proliferated through the pages. Images are still coming through.
Yes, Richard. You saw as good as I did. You know the truth.
But procedure!
I know what all this mess finally is.
It's fate. Deliver us from this misery, full-throated and without delay.
I was rattled. I could barely speak with the ink soaking through my lungs and down my gullet, but I choked out the words that the assembled friends knew they must hear, regardless of the consequences. But this information would change the world, alter the course of fate, and destroy the fractal walls that held our reality together. There are two authors at work here, and they are not collaborating. Those words echoed through my mind in the nearby woods as I yelled them into the storm, its winds carrying the speech to far-flung places, both real and fiction. The weather had really picked up steam now as I stood drenched in my moccasins and more weather-resistant than waterproof coat. I felt the well in my hand, having taken it from my desk with me into the wild copse that surrounded this now tiny shack that I had spent the last of my good money on renting to get this damn thing done. The well was cool, the well was hard, the well was ready. I lifted the thing to the sky, allowing the rainwater and the elements to revive my ink now dried at the base. I saw as the rainwater filled the capsule. I heard as the rolling thunder ventured closer. I smelled as the black-tinged water rolled down my hands. I felt as the lightning struck the well. I tasted clarity. The door slammed shut as I returned to my stoop, my perpetual bindings, the chains that held my creativity fallen away with this new surge of power. My hands, moving of their own accord beyond my own, began to write. The narrators were beginning to mesh now. I knew what I must do. Trusting in this inner voice, the narrator that had been telling a far different story than that I had intended for this work, I put my elementally infused ink to paper and let the narrator speak. Words sprang to life as a world both familiar and unknowable to me sprung forth onto the page, and the children of my efforts began to live their lives. All at once, separate from me and within the scope of a deeper vision I had not the eyes to see. Emily acted, Richard spoke, the narrator exposited. This world I had known for so long becoming something natural and alien to me. This was it. The work I'd come to complete was taking shape, an aberrant thing that I had not the consciousness nor the desire to interpret beyond the words that spilled from my well to the page before me. This story had stopped being mine long before I had started, before I arrived in this sanctuary of the art. Now it was something more. Hours rolled by. Days followed, the flow of my lightning interrupted only by the need to sleep in the hours that forced themselves upon me and the desire for food to fuel my fervor. Lightning coursed through me, through my pen, through my pencils, through my feet as I danced along the banisters of the old building. Emily, long gone into the blazing morning after the ritual, had seemed satisfied in some way. The revelation disquieted Richard, who had taken to his quarters for several days. He despises the dictatorship of the authors and the story betwixt them, convinced that he has been relegated to a side character or some such other rejection of his true choice to be. But I was, for once, and only once, free. To know that two fates intervened and entwined together to write my histories made it so that I could suddenly spin yarn into gold. that the cold bite of winter turned into the warm bath of summer, that autumn falling leaves became the undergrowth that beckoned spring. There was nothing in my mind or malady that could distract me from my calling. The unburdening freedom of knowing that the path ahead was foggy and could be at the hands of anyone meant that the path to tread was essentially my own, as it always had been. The conceit that those who believe in a deterministic universe are forced always to concede is that to live as if one's choices are predetermined is to live in bad faith. Certainly, all actions have reasons and reaction that spread back to the turning of the first page, the first drop of ink swirled into alphabet. But that does not mean that I lack agency. I must act as if I am free, even if I am a puppet for all those who read my story, who hear my story. Heavens, a joy to be recited, to be rotely memorized and repeated, to live again in others' minds, taking new forms, new interpretations, a new zeal for life in every retelling as they reach this moment again and again. Elations orgasmic as the turning of a key in a worn lock. As the tide rises, I am taken with it, and return to my study to bottle lightning once more. And then, one day, I met him. Again. The old friend and adversary, the one that stilled the moving quill. The one that stopped the errant thought. The one that haunts all writers' jaunts. The block. Unnerving, uncanny, hewn from void and placed quietly without recompense for those it might affect. I could feel my life slowing down, or even coming to a close, where all that had come before would cease and the rest would be left to the imaginations, not of my progenitors, but of those who had heard the tale aloud and allowed it to fester in their imagination. The close of the chapter. It sat there, looming on the desk as the light began to eke in from between the clouds overhead. Candles burned to the base and staining the once well-furnished wood of the rented accommodation's furniture. My prize, the manuscript. Finally, I had finished the thing. The dreaded incomancer monster had been slain with my mightier-than-the-sword pen, and had become the first of my many-to-be-seen achievements. It's a strange thing to look upon your work finished. It is as if you have become disembodied, experiencing a portion of yourself from afar. I imagine that it is the same feeling those who would astral project purport to feel. Weightless. My eyes become heavy as the Sandman catches up with me, a beast I had evaded these long days, weeks, however long it had been, in pursuit of completion. I stood from the desk, my back clicking as I grew from my hunched position to be stood once again a full person. Walking to the kitchen of the cabin, I realized that I had somehow, in my writing fever, already eaten all the food I brought with me. And so it was that I blinded myself with my phone. Calls and messages missed, notifications that I cared little for, as I opened the delivery app. Fish and chips. Well, chicken and chips, as I cared not for fish. Keeping myself awake had become a chore, but I had managed it until the delivery person showed up with my meagre meal. By the look on their face, I must have looked quite a state, as I opened the door to a barely audible gasp. I thanked them, shoved the money I had left on the side to dry after my excursion, and pressed it into their warm hand. It had been a while since I had acknowledged that the apocalypse of my efforts had not in fact removed other people from the world. and this warmth was a stark reminder that other people did, in fact, exist. I slept before I ate, the Sandman having resorted to the use of modern chemicals to help me sleep. In this case, it had been a pill to help with my insomnia. The sleep was dreamless, a peaceful oblivion, if not entirely restful. The food helped a lot to better my feeling of the ordeal. The cold chips dry from their reheating, and the chicken just about edible. I left the place as well as I could. This retreat in the woods by the lake had served to be the cradle of the birth of my world, and as such, leaving was both invigorating and melancholy. I had hoped that my name would be attributed to this place someday. Like those who came before me and made worlds and works far more influential than mine would ever be. To have been in their presence was an ephemeral and treasured experience that I hope to repeat.
Sarah. Sarah. Sarah!
What? Bloody what, Simon?
I fucked it.
You fucked it?
Yeah, I bloody fucked it.
Oh dear.
Yep. Metatextual bullshit, strange characters that go nowhere, purple prose as far as the eye can bloody see.
Oh, it can't be that bad. Here, let me have a look.
Alright, but it's not pretty.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's fucked.
It's pretty fucked.
Fucking spiked it, haven't I?
Yeah. But you weren't alone.
No, darling, no. Your bits are wonderful.
Oh, you're just saying that because yours are so...
Dog awful? Yeah, I know, but take the compliment anyway.
You want me to bring it home?
What do you love?
Sure.
You're an angel.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you.
Storm clouds roiling. I didn't have long. If I missed this, I would never be able to call myself a lightning bottler again. I took my coat, grabbed a flask, and started to ascend the ladder.
Don't! You blasted fool! If you do this, you'll surely die!
Don't you see, Richard? It's not real. None of it's real. I can't die. I never lived. All that is left is to end in the glory of the moment, Richard. To find peace at the end of a bottle of lightning. To find God in a pistachio shell. To know comfort at the end of a sentence. You never got that, Richard, and you never will. I climbed the rungs out of Richard's grasping hands and made my way onto the rooftop. Rain shod and breathing heavily, I hooked my elbow around the weather vane, clawing at the flask's stopper. Eventually, success was mine. I pulled away the cork, I held my flask to the sky, and...
And wait. What happens?
She dies.
What?
She gets struck by lightning and dies.
But she was the lightning bottler.
Yes, and now she's dead.
But... Wait.
If we're having this conversation, yes.
Wait.
It's too late for us.
No, wait.
I closed the book. The author is inside. The lightning is bouncing around its new home. I took the tome and placed it on the shelf next to the other authors who had tried to twist my fate. Next to the other fools who had attempted to learn my craft. Next to anyone who had ever tried to bottle lightning the way I do. Learn this lesson. Heed my call. Do not try and bottle lightning like your local lightning bottler. Each must find their own path, their own magic, their own ley lines and ways of reading the skies. And until then, beware. 'Cause if you try and copy the way I do it, I'll trap you in a fucking book and don't even try me. You see, my lightning has struck once. Pray I do not strike thee again. Anyway, that's that. Those Within the Manuscript was written by Evelyn Ravencroft and Oliver Morris. The narrator was played by Evelyn Ravencroft. Richard and the horse were played by Oliver Morris. ERIKA Sanderson played Emily. And the authors were played by John Ware and Muna HUSSEN. It was produced by Oliver Morris, your local lightning bottler. Serious about that book thing. Don't you try it.